that, I guess we can get started, Jonathan. So I'm just going to get us started with the companies of the day. So I'll start with AppTweak. So if you're not familiar with AppTweak yet, we are the #1 ASO tool. We provide a lot of data and insights about keywords, creatives, search ad intelligence, as well as market intelligence, app intelligence, and more, and all packed in a pretty simple interface. So hopefully you guys can enjoy all of it. And when it comes to reasons to work with us, well, we get to say we work with many great companies out there. We got a lot of recognition, and we're also working in multiple countries. We have offices in Brussels, San Francisco, Tokyo, Bangalore, looking to open more. So obviously, people can reach out to the nearest app tweaker, and we'll be happy to assist if there's any question we can help with. And if you haven't seen me before, I'm Simon, as in the now dubbed duo Simon and Fishfunkel. I've been working in ASO for about 5 years now, and I'm head of app store optimization at AppTweak. So I work as a leader of our consulting team for top clients, helping support mobile apps and games across different regions of the world, different verticals. And as it's probably not a surprise with our industry right now, but I am hiring for multiple positions. So if you are looking for a position with AppTweak, or if you know someone who may be interested, feel free to shoot me a message on LinkedIn, ASO Stack Slack, Twitter, or whichever is most convenient for you. Now, a good duo is not whole without a second duetist. So, Jonathan, I'll leave it over to you for Storemaven.
Thank you. Happy to be here. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Storemaven, I don't know who you are, because you should be, but Storemaven basically enables the world's most successful mobile brands and game marketers to maximize their paid and organic growth. We work with pretty much around 80% of top grossing mobile game publishers and app developers. Let me just switch slide. And we help marketers by offering them a platform to basically identify who their audiences and the most important audience segments are. We do that by connecting to all data sources, all relevant data sources that are crucial for mobile marketing and growth: the App Store, Google Play, attribution providers, different ad networks. And after identifying who are the actual quality audiences that folks want to go after, we help them analyze basically how you will be the most what will be the most impactful way to increase growth for that audience. Of course, help them convert and craft the best product pages and creatives and messaging to convert each and every audience with a full testing suite and a lot of other stuff as well. If you want to check out more, just visit storemaven.com. And I'm VP Marketing and Growth at Storemaven. I've been with the company for about 5 years, and that's the time I've been in the mobile marketing industry. A big fan of the industry, and I like rapid change and basically to learn everything there is to know about mobile marketing. And I'm a cosmology enthusiast. On my free time, I really like to research and geek out on anything regarding the universe. So that's me.
Yeah, I think the universe has a lot of things to teach us, but for today, well, to remind everyone, like maybe you've missed the previous webinar we had done, but basically a few months ago, I think about not exactly 6 months ago, but we had done a webinar on what changes iOS 15 was bringing to ASO and mobile marketing. And yeah, we talked and we felt like this was actually a good time to check in. We actually decided on that before last week when Google made it even more important to check in. So we'll mention it a bit more. But so what we're going to do today is we're just going to go over um, the three main features that iOS 15 brought to mobile marketing, which are custom product pages, product page optimization, and in-app events. And we're just going to share with everyone here good data, good practices that we've seen with different players across the industry, and start the conversations there to kind of see where we're at now that people have had some time to play with it.
Yeah, and lastly, there's also a surprise at the end. Um, some recent news that we're gonna talk about.
Oh, definitely. So, John, I think we've already introduced ourselves, so we can dive straight into kind of this little timeline where we can kind of remind everyone that basically iOS 15 was released at the very end of September last year, but we actually started getting our main features later, in-app events at the end of October, CPP and PPO beginning of December. And since the beginning of this year, we've already had quite some things with custom product pages, compatibility from Iron Source first, then Apple Search Ads. We're hearing a lot about compatibility with other ad networks, Facebook, but also several others, which we may not be allowed to name, but that many can guess based on the value of the feature for everyone. And last week, we also heard Google was entering the game. So, what for you has been the biggest change in the last 6 months?
I think first of all, it definitely took some time. I mean, from the announcement of iOS 15 and everything, created a lot of excitement around these new features. Which basically, I think the most exciting thing about it was for the first time the ability for marketers and ASO folks to split their store listing, their product pages between paid and organic traffic. That has been something that wasn't possible for forever, for years, and the and for us at Storemaven, I mean, the amount of tests and the amount of users that we tested throughout the years is insane. And one thing that we saw again and again is significantly or even radically different preferences between different audiences and the organic audience, and even within organic, breaking it down to search and different groups of keywords. People prefer different things. They get attracted to different parts of different apps and games, and the way that you present your apps and games in the App Store can really influence the conversion rate that you see on the App Store. And that can mean the difference between, like the size of this effect can be worth millions of installs and downloads, and of course tens of millions of dollars in revenues. So I think the ability to split the store between paid and organic was the most important thing there. And then, of course, we started seeing adoption from the ad network side, actually allowing usage of these features. So it all started with Iron Source that were really, really fast to adopt it. Apple, of course, with support through their own ad network, Apple Search Ads. And to tell you the truth, I mean, I don't know. I speak with a lot of ad networks and a lot of social platforms like the ones mentioned here. I don't know anyone that is not working on adopting and supporting custom product pages through their campaign managers and through a seamless integration with the App Store. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I think you were even telling me before we went on stage that sometimes partnership teams at these ad networks are in need of client testimonials about why it's important to support it to then pass it on to the product team, right?
Yeah, it's definitely driven by. I mean, they're all advertising platforms, so they're catering for very large advertisers, and the more of you that work for, that advertise a lot on these platforms actually reach out to your customer success folks and your representative over there, the faster they'll support it. That's actually how they work. So if you'll ask again and again for that feature, it will happen faster. But any way you spin it, I think that in the next few months, around this summer, would start seeing support from the social networks such as Facebook and the others.
Yeah, I think they all have to work on it, and especially with Google now making the same efforts to make customization possible. Um,
And I think
I have,
one last thing that was really exciting about these features is their ability to counteract basically the negative implications of iOS 14.5. So the way that Apple did it, and we'll talk in a bit. I mean, you gave a hint that we're going to talk a bit about Google and the new announcements. The way that Apple did it, they first took away something. They took away the IDFA and the ability to target based on user level data. And then they brought back to the community several different tools that can counteract that: custom product pages, in-app events, and different ways to target users better. So I think the promise of this entire suite of new features is also to counteract the decrease in growth that happened based on iOS 14.5. And we all saw what it did to Facebook, losing about $40 billion in revenues from that move by Apple.
yeah. I have to say though that for me, what's been really interesting is in terms of adoption, seeing that these custom product pages definitely catch more of the long-term view. But if we look to immediate adoption, and technically in-app events were released a month or so earlier, but I was really impressed by how fast the community, the industry started adopting in-app events, and we have some data about it. So maybe we can actually get started in the nitty-gritty of in-app events. And I've actually asked my team at AppTweak to help us compile some data that I'll show in a second. But what's really interesting to me is that it's been relevant in so many different fashions, and not just for games. Because initially, when we saw it, it was definitely like, okay, it's something for games, but others are apps are not as likely to use it. And in the end, I felt like everything was coming together in a way. So one first thing to share, just for the audience, also to kind of remember, is some of the best practices and value of in-app events. Is first that today, not doing an in-app event is really making a mistake, and that's because on search, there's going to be situations where if people have already installed your app, and your app still appears in some search results, with no in-app events, you're going to have what we call the call apps result, where you only see the icon, the title, the subtitle, and the star rating. Whereas if you have the in-app event, suddenly you kind of get the real estate that you lost by not showing the screenshots anymore back. So that's already tremendous value, because one thing we started learning with iOS 15 as well was how many returning users, how many people download an app again. And this is also something where in-app events have a lot to bring. So there's this value for organic in search, and there's this tons of value about featuring. So I know, Jonathan, you've worked on it quite a lot. So
Yeah.
what to you has been the most important consequence of in-app event when it comes to browse?
When it comes to browse, we'll actually see some insights in a bit. I just want to add one last thing about that the really crucial thing that you just mentioned around by not having an in-app event, you're missing out on users that already installed your game or app. And we analyze a lot of how users and how people basically behave on the App Store. And it is such a crucial point in time where you have a user of your app, let's say you're a game, and they played it for some time, and they're about to churn. I mean, that's the retention curve is what it is, and they're looking for a new game. And you're actually coming up on search results when they look up, I don't know, for a match 3 game. You come up, and if your search result listing is collapsed, as you say, you just see the icon and the title, and you don't have an in-app event, you just missed a huge opportunity to win them back and avoid them downloading a competitor. It's like, in fact, your competitors are stealing your users, and there's nothing better than an in-app event to actually surface new content, new modes of play, new things to do within the game or the app. So without doing that, you're just missing on that opportunity, and you're going to see it impacting the volume of returning users to your app, and of course retention and churn. As for browse, I think it's a similar situation, because Apple basically carved out a piece of the placements that they have, and they dedicate it specifically to in-app events. So what I mean by that, imagine they have 100 possible placements a day. They decided to put 20 or 30 and just dedicate it to in-app events. That means there's less inventory, quote over quote, to compete on for featuring if you're not doing in-app events. So you're competing for less inventory, and you're not competing at all for that new inventory that is just dedicated to in-app events. There's a lot of examples for that, as you can see here on the screen, in the games tab, in the apps tab. Sometimes it's in the today tab, even galleries that are just for in-app events. So the kind of impact that we saw, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a bit, the kind of impact we saw on browse is tremendous. Like, just by having an in-app event, you're seeing a huge increase, usually, in terms of exposure you get from browse traffic as measured by impressions.
So we're getting the first question from Mateusz, who's asking, would you recommend to have something like an always-on in-app event in this case?
I would definitely say yes. I mean, but there's a caveat. It's not that. I mean, the content of the in-app event is crucial. If it's not actually representing new content or something meaningful, and there's just like one in-app event that can become stale, and folks won't react to it. It has to actually represent something that's happening in the game: new content, an event, a competition, whatever. But I definitely say yes for always having at least one in-app event live at any given moment in time.
Yeah, I would personally say that having one as always on is better than none at all for a while, but it's important to have a rotation at some point. So I think apps, because we're also getting questions about how would in-app events benefit certain type of apps, because obviously it feels naturally as something for games, but I think even for apps, if you use gamification or if you have certain seasonality, there are many options to do it. And I think then it comes a question of like having kind of maybe some things that can be a default that you reactivate every few weeks, and then try to have fresh content every now and then to make sure there's a rotation. So before we move to, because we're getting a lot of questions, but before we move to more data, a couple of additional things to mention. First, the value of in-app events also for referral traffic. So you get a landing page for them. In my opinion, that landing page is not what you need to have once the event is live, because it's better, in my opinion, to have a deep link straight to the event on any campaign. But one thing that's really useful is that you can have this page be available 14 days before the start of the event, and then people can click on the notify me button to get a push notification from Apple on the day the event starts, which is going to do wonders for your engagement that day. And so for me, it's like if you have any type of somewhat significant event, don't just have it start on the store. It's make sure to publish it ahead of time. See if there's any traffic that's worth driving, so that you just ask for the notification and enjoy the fact that the first day of the event is going to be bigger, Apple is more likely to feature you in, especially if we think about certain types of in-app events like premieres. Definitely, you want to tease people about what's coming to your app.
Definitely, and you can analyze it and monitor it pretty easily. We actually ran a study for a lot of brands that ran in-app events, and you can actually see an increase in the number of sessions for once the event starts. So it's a proof, and of course, you can get the analytics of how many folks actually tapped on that notify me button. Um, so the data is clear. I mean, it does increase sessions significantly.
Yeah. So we are getting questions about the type of in-app events, the categories, which I'm going to go to first.
Mhm.
We are also getting questions about the impact of in-app event on keyword rankings. I know you have some data prepared for that, so I want to assure everyone we're going to get to these questions. So with a bit of data first, I started with gaming because this is where I expected adoption to be the highest. And I have to say, I wasn't disappointed. Basically, what we did is we looked at top 50 and top 100 games in multiple game categories in iOS US in the past 3 months, so from February to April. And what we saw is that if we look at the top 50, every top 50 game from role playing, simulation, action, casual, and casino have done at least one. Um,
That's amazing,
if
no? It's like an amazing statistic.
Yeah,
All of them.
and even if we look at the top 100, we get more than 50% for everyone. So this is telling us that even below the top 50, people are still engaging. Racing to me was surprising because there were fewer in-app events than in most other gaming categories. But I think here it may be due to the fact that it's harder for racing games to sometimes prepare everything. Um, they're, in my opinion, going to be really trending towards rather advanced in-app events that are going to be with competitions, seasons, etc. But even if you have something smaller, there's always something good to push. And overall, it's still not poor adoption. It's simply that overall, everyone is going into it in gaming. And it's also super interesting to have a look at the average length of in-app events, which we found is between 10 and 15 days in all these categories. Um, the number of in-app events, because it's not just like, oh, they've all done one in the past 3 months. No, we've seen that depending on the category, it's between 4 and 8 per game when they've done in-app events. So it's something where they tried it the first time and they keep doing it. So I think it's the first signal that it's working quite well, and there's a lot to unpack. So if we look also at the event types, which was something I wanted to see, we do see that indeed racing trends towards competitions first. Most categories are more interested in special, are just picking special event as it's kind of the default. But we also see some differences with some going more to live events, seasons and challenges going quite often. Major updates being popular in some genres. Premieres, which was meant to be more about content for apps, I think, the least favorite event type. But so it's still really interesting to see how um, we're probably having a lot of people start by just saying, "Oh, I want to do an event. I'm not sure which type to choose, so I'm going to pick special event first," and then trying out other type of events to see what benefits they get out of it.
Hmm. Definitely, and there's just a lot of opportunities here as well. I mean, this is just the first phase. Like folks have been putting out in-app events out there without a lot of data beforehand to understand, is there's a difference in performance by in-app event type. But now that there's some data that folks have been collecting about the performance, it's definitely something worth testing. Like what I see here, that competition is really popular with racing and words makes a lot of sense. But puzzle, where a lot of match 3 games, belong in terms of app store category, almost not using it at all. So there's uh, there's a lot of opportunities here that I see.
Yeah, absolutely. And so also going to apps, I saw that people were asking, are there examples from finance apps, for instance? Finance apps are among the categories that have done the least in-app events from what we've seen so far. But it's not 0% sale, so there are some examples available out there. And if you're looking for something really specific, let us know, because our team is going to be able to find you which app it was and when they did it. When they did it, my biggest surprise was seeing education and entertainment. I mean, entertainment I expected, but education I didn't think would adopt it so fast. I don't know what you think about these numbers here, but for me, it's like I was expecting entertainment and music to a certain degree to be really active with the premiere side of it. Health and fitness, I would have guessed may have things about challenges, and gamification, but there were some categories that really surprised me in how active they were.
Yeah, and I think it just calls for more creativity. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, finance is a category that is ripe for disruption, and it is the top apps are dominated by like these very large institutions that own some of the finance apps, and you need a lot of creativity if you're working in marketing an app to think what can be an in-app event. So premieres and it's an easy example, but there's a lot of things that can qualify as new content within the app that can be presented as an event, and these mini events and gamification elements or just anything with a community aspect to it can happen within these apps. For example, if I'm a finance app, I don't know, I'm a stock investing finance app and I'm hosting an Ask Me Anything with some finance guru. That could be an in-app event, and I'm sure there's a lot of these things happening within these apps. They're just not really, pushing the envelope on what they think can qualify as an event.
Yeah, and I think the major update option is also something you can look into. Um, by definition, you cannot pretend like every update is a major update. But if you're adding the possibility to go after certain cryptos, for instance, or adding new features around NFT trading, or all these things that, to be honest, I'm really unfamiliar with, um, these are going to be situations where, especially given how few finance apps are currently doing in-app events, you have a great opportunity to stand out here. And it's not going to be there forever, obviously, but there's still going to be a premium for those who make the effort first.
Hmm. For sure. And I see that Maria is asking here about examples of non-gaming apps that have been leveraging in-app events well. Uh, I do think that a lot in the streaming industry have been doing it extremely well. Really, like if you think about it, these are um, obvious. There's obvious opportunities for in-app events for them because there's a lot of new content, and a lot of that content is basically IP. Some of it really strong. So by leveraging in-app events, I think they're maybe the best example because they're also some of these players are leveraging the fact that these in-app events get indexed, and then they can be indexed for the whatever IP that their new show or movie is about, and get the value of the in-app event from featuring placements as well. So they're kind of like sending their arms, all around the app store with and really expanding the reach with that.
Yeah. For me, another thing that I found really interesting as a good practice was just playing on seasonality. I know that, for instance, SoundCloud have worked on seasonal playlists like for Black History Month, showcasing Black artists and the richness of Black music. And so they actually did an in-app event, and I felt like this was a great way of playing on something where it's not taking you a lot of time to compile, and At the same time, you can still bring content. I'm pretty sure the music was already in the app, but just by having an editor work on a playlist and then advertise, you align with seasonal situations that people are going to resonate with quite well.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, here we have again the stats. So we'll be sharing the deck. I don't want to spend too much time diving into the favorite event types of everyone, because I know you also have questions. And one thing you started mentioning about was the
Mhm.
impact. So you've had some really good uh, cases, and you've been able to get us some of them on this slide. So can you walk us through, for instance, the impact of the in-app event, not just for when it starts, but all across the lifetime of the event?
Yeah, for sure. So I couldn't share too many details, but basically what you see here is a lot of metrics that relate to sales. So given that when we started and we talked about the timeline really early on during the last quarter of 2021, Apple released new metrics to the App Store, and they basically allowed for the measurement of cohorted revenues. So revenue that came from users installing on a certain date, and basically tracking it over time, so you can calculate things such as D30 sales for a specific date. And you can basically combine that capability with the fact that you can choose it as a dimension in-app event as a source of downloads, and that gives you a pretty good understanding of how revenue contribution looks like from that was generated by users that came to the app through an in-app event. So you can see that while the in-app event was running, there's a pretty huge increase, but the effect is continuous. It basically carries out weeks and weeks after the in-app event was turned off. And when you sum up everything, depending on the size of your app, we're talking here about values that can reach millions of dollars that can be associated to in-app events. And what's really, really great about that, the fact that you can start measuring the dollar figure of some of your ASO and marketing activities, is you can come up to your team and share with the broader organization just the fact that this activity is generating X amount of dollars, and we're talking about, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars, and I'm sure that it would even reach more than that, because the impact on what's happening to sessions for active users and what's happening on the acquisition side through the indexing on search results and through the all the different featuring placement is huge. I mean, it's like the data is there. It's very clear that you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you're not investing in in-app events. And on search, and that's something really, really interesting. Everything that I'm saying now is should be taken as an anecdote. I mean, there's still it's still very much early days of in-app events, so everything here is based on initial studies. But basically, the kind of impact we were able to identify for folks that have been running in-app events and did good work in terms of targeting the keywords that they have in the title of the in-app events were significantly higher than browse. So if I said that browse can really, it could really show a huge increase in impressions for browse and get you more visibility in the store. If you actually target the keywords in the title of the in-app event in the right way, you can get even a much higher impact. And I'm talking also about downloads, that we saw that happening more on the search side than on the browse side when done well. And of course, sales, because it's really high quality users that are coming in from search. But that said, there's a lot of companies and a lot of teams that are leveraging in-app events and are not thinking about the fact that they're going to be indexed at all. So I saw some kind of city building simulator game that I won't name, running an in-app event that said something like free shipping, free deliveries in Paris. They had something within, it's like a city building game, and they had some kind of content around Paris, apparently, but that was the title. And they started to be getting indexed to food delivery keywords. Like when you would search in Paris for food deliveries, you would see all the local options and that city building simulator game. So it's really, really powerful, and it gets indexed. And I believe, and we talked about it, we have this assumption that Apple might have been benefiting the keywords in in-app events a bit more because it's kind of timely, so they don't have a lot of time to index them and rank them. So we see some companies getting ranked for pretty competitive keywords through their in-app events. So that's an example of what you can achieve on search if done right.
Yeah, I think there's so much to do, and it's going to be really interesting as we accumulate more data if we can confirm that there's actually kind of a keyword boost like you have when you launch an app for the first 7 days. Um, One other thing that I loved in what you are sharing, because it's also a question we got from Victoria. It's about how you measure the impact of the in-app events, because I think there's really two ways to go about it. One is measure the impact purely in terms of uh, in-app event creative in a way, which is to really just look at how many impressions you get and how many app opens or installs you get as a result. That for me is kind of the conversion rate of an in-app event. But then there's also the question of looking more at the downstream metrics. One thing I've gotten to do for one of our clients with my data science team was do a full uplift measurement of the event on the sessions, just to confirm that yes, the event is driving more traffic. And you were mentioning that you can also do that with sales, which I think is going to become even more interesting if Apple and Google converge like they're on the path to, I think,
Yeah.
because Google has been testing live ops um, for a while. They just announced they're going to take it out of beta and release it for everyone. And one thing that's really cool with live ops is that you can actually make giveaways or give discounts to people engaging with the event. So you can drive more sales around something.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if Apple will go that way, but I think overall a big challenge we're going to have is just figure out exactly how far we can push the in-app events and what are going to be the exact metrics we want to optimize for.
Yeah, and I think in order to explore that and start playing around with these things, you need to have a lot of data in one place. You need to have the timeline of when the in-app event was live, everything else that happened that might have influenced like different KPIs like sales, things happening on the UA side, a lot of different things. So you need to have this kind of one source of truth that takes data from a lot of different places, takes App Store Connect data as well, and allow you to quickly explore it and basically research and inspect if what's the correlation between different metrics, so you can play around it for yourself. Because in-app events is kind of a dimension, you can see a lot of metrics specifically for downloads that came in from in-app events. So it's sales, it's the cohorted sales, there's a lot of different things. Of course, taps on the notify me button and downloads of first time downloads and returning users, as well as sessions, as we said. So just a 5-second plug, we have a system that helps you do all of that and do this kind of analysis. It's basically what we envision should be a BI system for mobile marketers. It's called PolarBeam, and you can check it out in storemaven.com/PolarBeam, POLARBEAM. Yeah.
So I don't know if we've answered all the questions, but I'm also seeing that time is going really fast. And so I want to take us to custom product pages, because we started sharing insight at the beginning, but there's a lot to unpack again. So we have a couple of slides. We have a ton of insight to share. If you have questions, start shooting them now, because we only will have a few minutes for full Q&A at the end.
For sure.
For everyone, custom product pages, as a reminder, it's just create your own landing page in the store. Don't go with the notion that everyone needs to see the same thing anymore. It's changing fundamentally how we do ASO, in my opinion. And so some of the things that I've seen, and I'm sure you can comment on how it's been successful or not, depending on people, but it's how even with what people have today, like here I had compiled an event of what Matchington mentioned could be doing, because they have multiple personas. But so for me, what's really interesting is that there's many ways that you can actually think about how to segment your users. And because one of the only two networks that is already compatible with Apple Search Ads, what
Mm-hmm.
I find really interesting is that in this case, you really have to stop using Apple Search Ads, like Apple taught us to just do three buckets: one for brand defense, one for all your generic keywords, and one for competitors' brands and other apps. Uh, Now it's really about create buckets per intent, and not just per keywords. Try to group the keywords in how they make sense, but also identify if a core keyword actually gives you only one intent, or if there's multiple options. An example I like to give is if you look for any big name app, um, let's say Spotify, because I've worked in the music industry, and it's one of my pet peeves. So if you're looking for Spotify, you may be looking for the app itself, you may be looking for a music streaming app. If you're looking for Spotify for free, in my opinion, you may not be looking for Spotify exactly anymore. And so that means that you're going to have situations in which even the core keyword drives to different custom product pages, because you may not want to advertise the same thing to someone who will just be looking for free music compared to someone who would be willing to pay for a subscription and get great benefits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It's a great example. And I also think, like, can you go back one slide?
Yeah.
Just given that we wanted to do like this kind of a pulse check and see where things are, and some initial findings. So given that adoption on the ad network side is mainly on the Apple Search Ad side, and as we said, Iron Source, and there's a few other DSPs that support it as well. I can say that for folks that are doing it well, like the methodology that you suggested, and really putting thought behind the intent of every keyword, and finding great audiences that are attracted to certain parts of their apps and games. And I have another quick example of a game that was, it's a hidden object detective theme game, but it has some aspect that resembles a coloring game. And apparently they had a huge audience that was really high quality in terms of sales coming in from looking for coloring games. So, and they were ranking pretty well for that. So basically targeting coloring related keywords and using a CPP that highlighted that aspect of the game, and not the theme of the detectives, and not other hidden object mechanics, worked really, really well. And we see across the board uplifts of between 5 to 15% when it's done right on the ASA side. I'll answer the question of how to test it and measure it. It's a really good question. There is a solution. And on Iron Source and the ad network side, we've seen a lot of tests happening with CPPs. You need to remember that the baseline conversion rate there are pretty low, I mean, for network traffic. But we were able to see double digits up to 40% uplifts in certain cases by leveraging custom product pages. And again, doing a good job. It's not easy. You need to basically match the CPP with the intent and the state of minds and the reasons users actually install apps or play games to the app that is presenting the ad. So there's a lot of work to do in terms of which custom product pages are presented in which publisher app, like where the ads are presented. So a lot of great potential there, I would say. And I can't wait when the self-attributing networks, Facebook and the rest, would support custom product pages, because I'm sure it would have a pretty significant impact. Yeah.
So before we actually move up to product page optimization, because I think here we will mostly have to complain. Victoria has another question about how to evaluate if a CPP really performs better than the default ad on Apple Search Ads. So what would be your preferred method of comparing performances?
So we actually thought a lot about it. We developed a testing solution for custom product pages that take Apple Search Ad as a source. So there's I mean, we wrote an article about it. I can share with all of you later on how to exactly set up the campaigns. So everything is as clean as it can be. And we basically took out our testing algorithms that we developed over the years for product page testing in general, adapted them a bit to testing custom product pages for search ads, and we basically added it to our platform. So you have the ability to basically set up the campaigns in ASA, select the custom product pages that you want to test, and of course see the default one, the control one, and see the exact uplift with confidence and everything baked in. So you can reach out and we'll send more information and show it. And I'll send everything after the webinar so you can actually see some things in action.
Awesome. I think if people have to do it manually, my take will be one very rough way of doing it is just you can duplicate a campaign and just have this have version A of your campaign drive to the default, version B drive to the CPP. Be careful about everything that's A/B testing. Mateusz is in the chat, and he wrote great pieces on the importance of sample sizes, of knowing how you're testing. So ping him if you need more detail on that. But don't take it directly as an A/B test, but think about how it's going to help you measure if there's a significant difference between the two. And also, remember to be careful about how much you're getting from how much data you're getting from LAT. I'm never sure if it's on or off, but be careful about having the same parameters here. There is the issue of people below iOS 15 just cannot see cannot see your custom product page, even if you're trying to drive them to it. So there will be challenges, but consider that just having this, two campaigns with the same keyword targets, the same ad groups, going to one CPP, one default, or two different CPPs, that can help you narrow it down. And then once you found your winner, keep pushing forward. Now, we're almost out of time, and before we turn it to Q&As, we do need to talk about product page optimization. So
Yeah.
the slide says quite a lot already, but disappointment, improvements that may come or that you can still do with it. What's your take on it overall? Is it something that people should forget about or that they should still use?
I think, I mean, technically people could have used it if it was if one thing would be different, which is the fact that tests are interrupted as soon as you have a new submission. Usually if you work in a team, the submission is coming in from a different team, the R&D team, the product team. Somebody else is owning that. They would never delay a submission of a new app version for a running product page optimization test. So that stops the test, and you're basically screwed because you don't have enough time to reach confidence. Beside that, there's a lot of different things that make it extremely hard to adopt. From the time you're hearing from the market and from our own experience of running a lot of these tests, there isn't a ton of clarity about the statistical model and why it's like that, because there's a few unknowns there. But usually you need a very, very high sample size in order to reach confidence. Not a lot of developers have that. When you combine it with the first factor, it's almost impossible in some cases. And the lack of data granularity just makes it an operational nightmare to run tests, because you can separate the geos. So for example, if you want to run tests in 5 different geos, you need to do it one after another. Take everything else into account. It can take you months, if not more, just to run a few tests. And who knows if you're going to get confidence. So I think the current implementation makes it extremely hard to adopt, and that's most of the frustration that we hear. I have no idea if they're gonna fix some things. I'm sure they're gonna add more capabilities and listen over time, but it just the question of how important is this to Apple to make this better right now? I don't know. So that's what I've been hearing on that front.
Yeah, from what I've heard, it's a situation where you shouldn't bet on Apple fixing it anytime soon. It's not that it's impossible, but it's just that um, there are other priorities. Like they have done and have had success with in-app events and custom product pages, and they have more expectations around it. So from a product standpoint, I wouldn't expect them to prioritize it too much. Now, with what we have, I think there's definitely a huge disappointment, but there's also something that we should just get over and start thinking about how can we still use it, because I think for sure the interruption as soon as you start preparing a new submission is the most annoying thing I've seen. But you can try to get smart about it. Uh, Christmas is far from today, but we know there a lot of tech teams are going to do a feature freeze around Christmas. Maybe they do one for summer holidays in Europe or in the US, and so on. So it's also going to drive those who want to still leverage it to actually talk to their product team, learn about what things are happening, um, which means you're going to have new ideas of what to do for your ASO overall. And at the same time, you'll start seeing your windows of opportunities. Um, and this is when you also have to use this as an opportunity to understand what A/B testing is meant to do. It's not meant to tell you this set
Hmm.
of screenshots is better. It's not a definitive answer. It's just here to give you clues as to what things are different enough to make an impact on some people and ideally help convert better. You can also figure out if people really don't like something. And
Hmm.
with the challenges like data granularity, not being able to split multiple geos in one test, what you can do then is use an A/B testing tool. My default one is Google Play Experiment, and just start testing things there to have a first ID. Okay, and use PPO when you have a window of opportunity as a confirmation tool, or making sure that it's not going to be too different between Apple and Google. I think you need to adapt the creative layout because people don't see the same thing. It's not the same UX, even if you want to promote the same features. And also prioritize the important markets. If you see that your number one market or your default, the US, is performing really well in PPO, maybe you want to check with a couple of tier one markets. And then don't waste time trying to get PPO on some geos where you have low traffic.
Hmm.
But don't give up on it entirely. Just be smart about it. Don't think it's going to give you the answer that's going to boost your conversion 20% in every time you do it. But just
Yeah.
get ready to test something as give me more, getting more insight from this, and make peace with the idea that it's not going to be giving you straight answers immediately.
Yeah, I agree. It's not. And there's another question here that we'll take along the way. If we know any of product page optimization success stories, I don't know of anyone, and I'm speaking with most developers out there. Besides very specific teams that are like one of the top 5 or 10 mobile companies in the game industry in the world that has such a huge ability to get a sample size that is huge. They can actually reach confidence in a relatively normal time, and even they encounter a lot of problems. So I don't know what about the others. um, to be honest, I just from the market. I don't see this becoming an alternative to any team that needs a robust testing method to implement a robust testing methodology over time, because it's just not going to be enough. But there's also some updates from the Google side that we want to talk about pretty briefly, because we don't have a lot of time. So just start with the Google Experiments update, because we just talked about product page optimization, and Google Play actually followed suit with Apple in terms of providing a bit more flexibility on how Google Experiments are run. They did it's pretty early on. Everything here was announced last week, besides Google Experiments, which was in beta like a few weeks before. But what they did is they basically allowed developers to choose all the test parameters and changed a bit the way that they calculate confidence for tests. There's no more scaled installs, if you're familiar with that. And you can choose all the test parameters. So things like confidence level that you can control, things such as the minimum detectable effect, which you can control prior to setting up the test. And I'm not going to go into all of the details right now. We're going to cover it pretty heavily in the coming weeks. But it's a good and a bad thing together. It's good for folks that really have a background with statistics or access to data scientists and statisticians that can help them understand what's the right configuration for the test. We saw this kind of things happening with other products on the web and a few other mobile product page testing platform. Usually when folks need to configure the test themselves, there's just too much room for mistakes, and it becomes kind of ridiculous because you can configure the parameters so that you need only a sample of 200 users, which obviously is not statistically significant. But the platform would show you, Google Experiments, the result. It would give you a result according to the parameters that you've set. That being said, if you're actually interested in getting an uplift and not implementing variations that would really decrease conversion rates, which is the most dangerous things with tests, you need to take it with a grain of salt and really think about how you configure these parameters. But overall, if you do have access to data scientists and you do have a background in these fields, it can give you the tools to get more accurate tests with Google Experiments, which is great in our view. The other features, I'll just run by it really quickly. Custom product pages on the iOS side, Google again called and raised. They're doing 50 custom store listings, which are basically the same as custom product pages in terms of what you can customize. And you can use them both with a dedicated URL with any source that you would like. And they initially announced it. It's still not rolled out, that you can use it with Google Ads and probably UAC, which is kind of amazing. The live. Go ahead.
Just one mention, because there was Nisha in the chat saying that there's only 5 custom store listings at a time. Nisha, you want to head to your store console right after we end this talk, because it's not the case anymore. You are already able to now start building custom store listings with URL access. So if you have some available assets, I think that some people are going to have a lot of work in coming weeks, because Google really played it well by not really teasing it much and just announcing, oh, let's get started right now. So I'm really curious to see how people are going to play with it now.
Yeah. And lastly, there's Live Ops, which is basically the in-app event version of Google Play. That has been expanded. It was available just to select developers. Now it's in open beta. You can apply if you're working and marketing a large app. There's like a minimum threshold of having 100K MAUs, I believe. But it's going to roll out to everybody. And it's basically, it mimics really well everything that we know from in-app events. And we saw the kind of value that was available on the iOS side. It's also going to be, it's going to appear in search results on the Google Play Store. There's a dedicated event tab it's going to appear in, so a lot of featuring placements, and it's going to appear on your store listing page. Everything I just talked about with custom store listings and live ops event cards. They're going to have their own analytics and metrics in the consoles, so we can all analyze their impact. So pretty exciting. Now we can implement everything we learned and prepared for the past year across the ecosystem, both Android and iOS. And it's definitely, I believe, the future of mobile marketing. And yeah.
Oh, I think definitely so. We have to wrap it up, even though a lot of people are still asking questions. We're going to try to get to everyone by message. Do contact us on our social media, on our websites through Intercom. Uh, One final question for you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Uh, we just got Google I/O. Google just raised Apple. Apple is going to have WWDC in a couple of weeks. What do you think is the next thing?
Oh, in terms of like marketing capabilities in the App Store, I
Yeah.
think I my personal hypothesis is they're just gonna go very like full on in terms of trying to enforce fingerprinting. I mean, that's where they're gonna focus next. I don't think we're gonna see massive or dramatic changes to the features. Maybe an improvement here and there in terms of in-app events, custom product pages, and product page optimization. But I think they might surprise the industry with some type of way. There's a few ways they can do it in terms of enforcing fingerprinting and basically their new privacy guidelines that have been out for all about a year. So I think that's what we'll hear.
Yeah, I think you've been reading a lot of Eric Seufert recently, but
Yes.
definitely some things that we've been hearing may come. My expectation is I don't know if they will share it at WWDC, but I'm really hoping for targeting capabilities in search ads where they would just give us what in-app events already do, where you can now do search ads with specific settings in terms of new users, active or lapsed. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think for brand defense, the next stage is we have custom product pages. Now we want to do different brand campaigns for new users and lapsed users who just need to see what's really new in the app and don't need to be sold on the biggest features that have been there, the core features that have been there for a while. So I hope that's going to happen. And definitely looking forward to seeing the announcement by Apple in a few weeks.
For sure. That has been a pleasure speaking with you, Simon, and
It's
everybody here.
always a pleasure. We're known as a duo now, apparently. So
Yeah,
we'll
now we're
probably
known.
have to do another one in a few months.
For
But
sure.
thanks everyone for showing up.
Thank you.
Definitely let us know if there's anything that we haven't covered today. Reach out to us, and we'll try to make sure we get all the questions answered after this. And yeah, see you all in the next one. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. See ya.